Okay. Ben and Matt, how you going?
Good, thanks, Pato.
Good, Pato.
That's good. Thanks for
How
coming
are you?
on. Thanks for coming on and well done on your run at Melbourne. That was bloody unreal.
Yeah, thanks. Was good.
So MVP in 2022 was the first backyard ultra in Victoria to enter the 40-yard realm, thanks to both of you. And I don't really know what this means, but I felt like I was in the twilight zone watching you guys at Melbourne when you were running in the 50s. So after Shepperton, Matt, last year, it was just you and I for a few loops, and it was the most epic few hours of my life when it was just you and I. And I asked you later if it was the most epic finish to a race you've been in, and you were honest. You said, no, it's not. MVP 2022 was the most epic race you've done. But does Melbourne overtake MVP 22?
That's a hard one. Yes and no. Yes, because it's the number's a lot higher. There's probably a few more people watching and things like that. But I know a whole lot more about backyard ultras now than I did in 2022. So in 2022, there was an overwhelming sense of satisfaction and sort of covering new ground, so to speak. So it was definitely different. I have to say that. I don't know if it felt as epic as 2022 because that sort of distance was so brand new to me at the time. Does that sort of answer your question, mate?
Yeah. So Ben, you've been in the 50s a few times now. I think this was your second best result though, 58 yards, yeah?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. But you've raced at Bigs, you've raced at Sat Champs twice. But this is the first time since MVP when you were in like the final two. So how does being in the final two at a race like Melbourne compare to like races like Sat Champs and Bigs?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's probably it feels like a different race. It almost feels like a different format, I guess, in a way, because I don't go into Stat Champs with Phil and Ryan and James and even Tim and all of that, thinking that I'm not there to win. I'm there to sort of go as far as I can go. And there's no excuse me. There's no there's no mind games or looking at anyone else to see how anyone else is going, or except that you just don't want to be the first one to drop. That's all. But once a couple of people drop, you sort of relax a bit, and then you really do you're just trying to do your best. But something like Melbourne and MVP, obviously, it does feel like a bit more of a competition. It was a bit unusual racing against Matt, like him being sort of the main competition, so it didn't really feel, probably a bit like Matt. MVP did feel more epic. Yeah. Like it felt like we were just slugging it out. That's what it felt like. This one was a bit different because we know each other so much better now. And the fellow that came third, Brandon, the Crow, he was a pretty likable guy. I think we were just running really for most of it. But yeah, it definitely feels a bit different.
Yeah. Ben, when did you decide that you were like Melbourne all systems go?
I can't remember exactly when it happened, but Matt and I talked about it earlier in the year, and sort of agreed we could both go and it would be a good opportunity to sort of, at least if one of us wasn't there, then there was a solid chance it would end in the 40s, which, as it turns out, it would have done. So we kind of agreed if we were both there, then we had a good chance to run a good total, which we did. So I can't remember exactly when that happened, but yeah. And just with it being new, inaugural, and I knew that a lot of other people, like a lot of the big names, were committed already in other places. That it would probably be a good one to get to. And Sean's always been a good supporter of our sport, and even a good supporter of myself. So kind of felt like it was it was a good thing to do for a lot of reasons.
So last year, I think it was, you finished down under 135 for the first time. And down under, it clashes a little bit with Melbourne. Like, I'm not too sure how, it's pretty soon anyway. So if you didn't finish down under last year, do you reckon you would have done down under this year to try and finish it again?
If you'd asked me that 2 months ago, I would have said no.
Yeah.
Because I committed to the race for 3 years. I said to Camille, I'll have 3 cracks. Because it's a hard race to train for. We live in dairy farming country. There's a lot of rolling hills, but there's no big hills. There's no mountains, so you got to travel a bit to do that. Get that sort of elevation. For anyone who's listening, it's a 217 kilometre race with about 14,000 metres of elevation gain in it, and it's tough. So, but then about, I don't know what it was, maybe 5 weeks ago, they announced it was going to be the final ever DU 135 this year. So if I didn't have Melbourne, who knows, maybe. But and if I hadn't finished it, then it might have crossed my mind. But so I'm glad I finished it, and I'm glad I had another race, so I didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah. And Matt, you've been in since the early Whispers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I think the first Whispers came out at Wild Dog last year, so almost 12 months ago now. And Sean and Paul Pratt announced that that Ultra Series would be bringing an event right in the heart of Melbourne. And obviously, talking to Sean after the event, he sort of gave me a rough date, and sort of just looking at my calendar, it's just a really good time of year for me to do an event. So yeah, I sort of booked it in pretty early, to be honest, because it just was really good timing. I would have had a lot of rest between events and races, and a lot of rest between my next race. So the timing was really just perfect for me. So yeah, I got on board nice and early, and I'm glad I did, because it allowed me to have a nice long training block, and then because of that, I was able to have a nice long taper period. So yeah, I got on nice and early.
And you had a bit to do with helping like find and design the course as well, right?
Yeah, so Sean reached out to me months and months and months ago, when a few of his other plans fell through. I think Sean got a bit of a rude awakening of the conservative nature of Victorian councils, and there was a lot of red tape, and eventually Sean settled on Yarra Bend as a great location. And he did some mapping and stuff, with all trails and things like that. And he just sent me a link and a map and said, "Oh, look, mate, I just need some help. Is there any chance you can go to this location and have a look at this course?" And I said, "Look, mate, sure, you're putting on a new course. I'd love to help, because, Sean knows that I'm I'm an original devotee to the format, so he knew that I was going to be keen. So I just drove down there, sort of ran his map, and there was a couple of things that weren't great. There was a bit of extra elevation that didn't need to be there. There's a few other things. A lot of traffic management issues, and that was the main thing he wanted me to check was, are we running over driveways and on public roads and things like that. So we basically just sort of did, a few laps, a few routes, just playing around with a bit, trying to get that 6.71 kilometre distance in the end. And then eventually, we found this one that was the current loop or yard. And I guess we're all really stoked with the final product.
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't run the course, but I was there and everyone was saying how great it was. Like, did you have confidence leading into the race that it would be such a hit?
I think so. There was nothing like it's a beautiful course first and foremost. You're running along the Yarra River. The first half of the course is nice and traily, nice soft trails underfoot, beautiful sort of scenery, and then the second half is a lot more open and sort of more advantageous to flat road running. So it really had a bit of everything. So I think there was something in this course that would have been happy, made everyone happy with some of the course. So I don't think there would have been a whole lot of negativity around the course.
Yeah. What about you, Ben? Were you a huge fan of the course?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I'm a huge fan, but a fan of the course. No, it was good. It was funny how my favourite parts and my least favourite parts changed. They actually sort of swapped. So the first half of the race, my least favourite part was that open road running bit that Matt talked about. But by the end of the race, that became my favourite part. So, I did like it. And there were parts, I'd never actually been in that area before. So that was... that helped to keep it fresh, but there was some really pretty parts, and it's you could run a big total on that course, really.
Yeah,
it's surprisingly a little bit tough in a couple of spots. Just probably there's a two fairly steep hills to hike. They're only short, and then there's two downhills as well, which sort of sneak up on you and just take a little bit of conditioning in the quads. So if you're gonna do it, I would recommend getting a little bit of working on the quads in your training. But they're only short, but they just add up. But it's great. Yeah, it is a great course. I did like it.
Yeah,
I'm glad. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm actually glad that Ben brought that up, because I definitely found, even though there was only 60 odd meters of elevation, I actually found it to be a lot more challenging than I expected it to be. Particularly at night, I found that with the changes in the terrain at night time, when you've got your headlamp on, I found that I in particular, Ben might feel the same way. I lost a lot of time at night, like at least 3 or 4 minutes every loop, without exerting myself, without being slower or anything like that, just because the visibility was a little bit harder in the first half of the loop. And and just even on the straight open path, there was a lot of uneven footpath. I found that really slowed you down at night time, because you obviously just naturally had to, take a bit more care. Did you find that, Ben?
Yeah, 100%. That uneven footpath at night time was really hard to pick those lumps and bumps. Whereas in the daytime, you just glide over it. It's so obvious where you need to be. But night time, you found I was sort of just scuffing my feet a lot more, and definitely losing minutes as soon as the sun went down without even understanding where I was losing them. But
would you say it's the easiest course you've ran?
No, I would say the Hurdy's Sat Champs course was the easiest. Yeah. Just because there wasn't, that is flat.
Yeah. And what about you, Matt? Would you say it's as easy as Shepparton?
No, I definitely put Melbourne next in line. Melbourne's definitely more runnable and an sort of a more appropriate backyard course than MVP and Wild Dog. They both have their challenges, which is great. But in terms for pure runnability, it's in the middle. I couldn't possibly say that it's as runnable as GV. Not that it's a whole lot more elevation, but the hills and the elevation at GV are just so perfectly timed that you don't even think about them. You walk over the bridges, you walk, you go up that one hill, you walk. Whereas at Melbourne, you still have to think a little bit. There's still a little bit of technical running involved, whereas GV, there's zero technical running involved.
Yeah.
So it's not the easiest, but look, at this stage, we haven't ran a Chuki yet at Two Rivers. But at this stage, it would definitely be the second fastest backyard course in Victoria.
Yeah. And because you had like a lot to do with designing it, were you like hyper aware of people talking about the course while you were running it? Like...
A little bit, but I think it was widely sort of known, with posts on social media that I had a little bit to do with it. Yeah. So I don't think there were any secrets or anything. I wasn't hiding anything, or people weren't, hiding anything from me. Yeah. So when people were talking about the course, the really positive thing was that it was all positive. Everyone was saying, "Oh, it's such a beautiful course." So that's a great thing. So the course was really good in the end.
Yeah. So I was wondering, Matt, like, I mean, you broke 40 in 2022. I'm wondering, did you feel like you had like a little bit to prove at Melbourne? And what I mean by that is that like you're a 3-time winner of GV without posting like a massively high total, and that's kind of my fault because I dropped out too soon. But so did you want to prove, like, just to yourself, if anything, that you're really one of the big dogs in the Australian backyard ultra world?
Sort of, yeah. To be honest, yes. The great thing about Melbourne Frontyard for me was that it really was a free swing. I've made it pretty clear to my peers and you guys that I really do want to spend the next year trying to qualify for the Sat Champs at least one more time. I've got a little bit of unfinished business at the Sat Champs. I didn't have a really great race in 2022, and I'd love to go there at least one more time and put in a really good effort. So, I made the decision quite early on, basically the day after the 2024 Sat Champs, when I realised how much I missed it. So I set a little target, and Melbourne Frontyard was just a really good free swing where I could have a really good preparation, a really good race with not much at risk, because there was really no stakes there's no stakes in this race because we're still a long way off the qualifying period for the Sat Champs. There's still all the silver ticket events to come. So there was no risk involved in this event. All that could come from this was, a good or bad result, or a huge amount of confidence built, or less confidence, and maybe I'd have to reassess, where really am I as a backyard runner. And as it turns out, had a pretty good run. And regardless of the number, it's really given me the confidence to now take that next step to the next race and improve on that, which will be a silver ticket event. And it's basically just given me the confidence to believe that, I can actually compete in a silver ticket race. And that's what my goal out of Melbourne Frontyard was to just put in a good race, show improvement, put up a good number, and really build the confidence that my next race or the one after that can be a really good race. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you definitely ran a good race at Melbourne, that's for sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
So Ben, at the Sat Champs, when you were on the podcast last, you did mention at the Sat Champs that you had some pretty serious gut issues that sounds like it hadn't experienced before. So did you do anything different as far as your nutrition goes, just to be extra cautious at Melbourne?
Yeah, I didn't take. I took almost no painkillers really of any kind. I took Panadol, but I didn't even have any Panadol until, like, I literally didn't have access to Panadol until 24 hours into the race.
Yeah.
And when I sort of felt like I needed it, I did take just one anti-inflammatory sort of every 6 to 8 hours, but I was very strict about not taking any more than that. And just so we're clear, one anti-inflammatory is half a dose. And you shouldn't take anti-inflammatories when you're running ultras. We all know that. Everybody knows that. Sometimes it gets really painful and you just want the pain to go away, so you do it anyway. Yeah. But I didn't, and we were really strict on it. And I think that was, it feels like it made a massive difference, to be honest. I felt like I was eating foods. I was eating gels, and I don't even eat gels. Like I was eating things that would normally make me sick that far into a race and having no issues at all. It was great. Yeah. So yeah, it was probably in a little bit more pain, but not that much, really, to be honest. In hindsight, I sort of feel like maybe I've just been a bit of a sook in the past.
Well, you're definitely moving well. It didn't look like you were feeling any pain, like looking at you.
No, and I wasn't really. Probably the last 4 yards, I started to feel it the most. And I think if you go back and look at the Facebook live finishing sort of videos, I think you can kind of see in those last few hours that I am not moving as well as I was at 51, 52.
Mm.
But at 58, I was moving better than I was at 45 at Sat Champs, and feeling magnificent by comparison. So, yeah, I was really happy with that. Took a lot out of that. So. Yeah.
And, so as far as your training goes leading into the race, Matt, like you had a massive lead in, like you're running, I think you even ran a 200 kilometre week. So it looks like that was the most mileage you've ever done leading into a backyard ultra before.
Yeah, definitely. I touched on it in pretty good detail on Sean's social media interview right after the race, but yeah, you're absolutely right, Pato. Just by coincidence, I just had a little bit of leave from work as well, so I really got a really solid block in the early part of this year that I was available to do a lot of running, to be honest, and I just sort of built on it, and my body was responding really, really well. If I started to get, feel pain or anything like that, I would have pumped the brakes, but it's the first time I've really done a big block and my body responded completely positively. And so I just went with it. So I just sort of built for a couple of months and then had a nice taper period. And yeah, it's just sort of all come together, to be honest. I just had a lot of fortunate events where I seemed to have a little bit more time to run this time around, and I also decided to run a little bit more. So putting them together, it just gave me a bigger window to really put more hours onto the road. And I think that's one of the key contributors to sort of my performance, to be honest.
Yeah. Was that a decision like you made on your own, or did you speak to like a coach or someone in the Backyard Ultra game who gave you advice to do that?
No, no. Look, I made the decision on my own because I knew that this event was going to sort of make or break my confidence in the format, because I knew I'd have no excuses. I knew that there was going to be a great runner in the field in at least Ben. I wasn't sure who else was sort of going to enter, but I knew early on that Ben was keen. So I knew that there was potential to get a big PB. So I planned it that way. And so instead of going into the race or into my preparation to win the race, like I always do, for GV in September, this one was about building to breaking new ground. So I made the decision very early on that, look, I'm not going to have any excuses here, and it's the time to improve. Like, as we've said, I ran 40 loops, 3 years ago, and I haven't really done a whole lot since. So I knew that if I was ever going to really show improvement and step up and sort of level up, this was a perfect opportunity for it. So not having sort of accepted that, training had to take a priority as well. I had to make the training match my goals. So yeah, I just ran more kilometers, ran increased volume and frequency, and hope that it would all come together on race day, and unfortunately it did.
Yeah, unreal. One of the things that is both, or it seems like you've both got in common, is that you both don't mind going alone for the first night without a crew, or maybe a little bit of help here and there. So what's the reasoning for Ben? What's your reason for like going like the first night without any crew?
Yeah, the crux of it is just practicality. It's just one less night that the kids need to be babysat. And I can't, like, when it gets hard, I need Camille there. Like, she understands. Like, we're just, I don't know, feels like just perfectly matched up now. So on that second and third night, I really want Camille there. She just knows exactly what to do. She knows what to put in my hands. We can speak really plainly with each other, and it is almost, there's a lot less communication is required. This one in particular was just amazing. She was absolutely magnificent. Just can't praise her enough. Just everything that we learnt from Sat Champs, she just implemented, and we didn't really discuss it all that much before the race, but she would just have food and just put it into my hands without me asking for it, and somehow it happened to be the right food pretty much every time, and it was the right amount, it was the right break, and so that's that, really, just to give her a break on that first night, so that on that third night she's not completely shattered. And I guess I kind of just have trouble asking for help a bit, so I don't really ask for help on that first night much. I was really lucky that Chris Norris, good friend of mine, he lives not far away, so he came down after he put his young baby in bed. So he came, I think he showed up about 9, so about 5 hours into the race, with a burger and chips and a Coke, and I was sharing a tent with a friend of mine from this area as well, so you had stuff for Tom as well. And then he hung around for, I think, until about midnight, just to make sure everything was settled and everything was in the right place. And so that was more than enough. That burger just came at exactly the right time. I think that's the main thing, especially if the race does start a bit late, is you've got to have a meal on that first night. And if you're uncrewed, it can be hard to get what you might think of as an actual quality meal, not just a cup of soup or something like that.
Yeah.
So Chris coming down with that burger was perfect, and then after that I was set until Camille arrived. So, but yeah, it's just practicality.
Yeah. Do you also like just being able to like zone into the race just on your own without any distractions, like just get into your own head a bit as well?
Yeah, I do. I don't mind being alone at all. Yeah, I'm more than happy in my own company. So that is definitely a little bit of, I love sitting in that tent in the dark by myself. Doesn't bother me at all. I stress a little bit that I might sleep through my alarm, but yeah, you're right. I quite like the peace as well. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And what about you, Matt? Like, I don't think I've ever seen you crewed on, or maybe once, but you often go without crew on your first night.
Yeah, Pato. Yeah, sort of very similar to Ben. Even back my very first Backyard Ultra in 2021, just because of practicality as well. My wife came. We all set up the gazebo and the aid stations and all that sort of stuff, and set up my gear. And then we had a nice meal together. And then she left for the night, and and it worked really well that very first time. And so ever since then, I've just sort of accepted that I don't I don't need to be crewed and take up a crew's time on that first night. And you touched on it briefly as well. I really do enjoy the solitude of the first night. For me, it allows me to think about what's about to take place in the second day, and it allows me to just have some time of my own to digest the journey I'm about to go on. And so I actually really like being on my own on the first night, even if I had the opportunity, and I did at Melbourne. I had Peter Clark, who is a extremely professional crewman. We'll probably touch on that shortly, but he was obviously available to crew me from loop 1 to loop 57. But I actually told him, look, you're going to need your sleep. I've got this covered, and I actually enjoy having a little bit of time of my own, because I know I'm going to need you at some point. I don't need you now, So I really enjoy that solitude of the first night, and allows me to just be me and sort of work into the race.
Yeah. And when the crew does get there, I mean, I guess it makes a bit of an impact. Like, it kind of like gives you a bit of a boost.
Oh, definitely. And that's the rule. I said to Pete, look, you turn up at whatever time, whether it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, you turn up with a large coffee filled with sugar and, some bacon and egg sandwich or whatever. And that just sets you up for the whole day. And that's what it did. And that's what happened. And it was great.
Yeah. So the 4 p.m. start meant the night started quickly. Do you think it makes the first night easier then?
I don't know. I mean, you could definitely go a couple of hours earlier, and it wouldn't make any difference to the first night, I don't think. It is kind of nice just to get into the first night, rip the Band-Aid off and be into it.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to be aware that even though it might feel easy right now, it's probably going to be detrimental later on. You've just done 10 hours with no sleep for no reason, really, just driving and setting up.
Yeah. Whereas,
if it was at 10 o'clock in the morning, you'd get up and you'd be awake for 4 hours before you started running. So. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I like it in a way, but I'm aware also that it makes it later in the race a bit harder.
Mm. Were you in cruise control for the first 24 hours, Ben, or did you have any issues at all?
No, it was actually probably my easiest first 24, I think. Could have been, it was lucky. I had my mate Tom that came down with me. He ran 11 hours, so sort of hung with Tom for 11 hours. It was his first ever backyard. And then I met a fella, Trem, who is the Chris that came and crewed me. Trem and I are crewing Chris at Down Under in a few weeks. So I met Trem, and then Trem just ran with me for 12 hours. And then that pretty much got me through the first 24, just hanging with people that I've never run before. So, I don't know. It passed really quickly in that way. Actually, I think I did half a lap with Matt, and I said to him, Matt, I'm deliberately avoiding you at the moment because I have a feeling we're going to get a bit of time together later on. So, but it went really cruisy, really good.
What about you, Matt? Was it like a pretty smooth sailing for you the first night?
Yeah, look, it was. I had no issues whatsoever. I tend to your sort of first question with Ben about the timing of the start time and how we think that sort of affects things. I tend to prefer maybe the early morning starts because I feel by the night time the race has obviously progressed more. So, by midnight, you might already have run 100 kilometres or something. Whereas in this race, you really, by midnight, just sort of still warming up. And therefore, to get to 100 miles, you've really got to run through most of the second day. So I think if I had the choice, I'd still choose an early day start. I guess most people would choose that as well. It's quite, reasonable to me, it sounds. But having said that, this race, this 4 o'clock, this nice soft afternoon start, it was beautiful. The weather was beautiful. I hope we might as well touch on it now that the weather for this event was the best weather I've ever had in a backyard ultra. I couldn't possibly ask for better weather for the whole weekend. Even in all those GV years that we always talk about how good the weather is, it still gets a little bit cold at night, whereas the temperature differential between day and night for this event, you could barely feel it. It was unbelievable, don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, it was the best weather you could ask for. We had one cold night. I think is that the second night?
Second.
Yeah, second night was a bit frosty, but I just put a hat on. That was the extent of my covering up. So, and then the days were like 18 or 16, 18. I don't know what it was, but it was perfect. Yeah.
I got there at the 22nd yard, and it looked like an awesome vibe. I mean, the 4 o'clock. The 4 o'clock start just felt right for that event, I reckon. But yeah, I got there at the 22nd yard, and there are a lot of runners were there breaking PBs and hitting 24 for the first time. It kind of felt like there was a lot of runners there doing their first backyard ultras, and it was a really good vibe. So I reckon that would have also been fun running in as well, like that first 24 hours.
Yeah, for sure. Sure for me. It's my first Ultra Series backyard, and I knew, they're sort of famous for their vibe and their sort of party atmosphere, and I was a bit nervous, to be honest, because I like a bit of a low key, quiet thing. I wasn't sure about the music at 5 minutes and all of that, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, you love the Ultra Series vibe, don't you, Matt?
Oh yeah, definitely. Mainly just because Sean and particularly in this race, like Stuart Rainbow as well, they were just oozing with enthusiasm and charisma. Yeah. They really made it.
The guy's like a game show host. It's amazing.
He is. He's got the voice for radio. He was outstanding.
How good was his countdown?
Fantastic. I actually sent Stuart a personal message a few days ago, just sort of expressing how grateful I was that he was there as a RD, because he was fantastic. I thought he was so good, so professional, great. And he just had the perfect amount of energy without overwhelming the runners. Just the perfect amount of energy to keep everyone enthusiastic.
He
Really good.
knew so many names. I don't know if he was reading bibs, but he was calling out people in the corral. This person looks good, and this person looks good. I was like, wow, I didn't know his name.
Yeah, that's unreal. So making it through the second night, I think a lot of people now realize if they want to break through for a big total, making it through the second night is a really important thing. And you brought it up when you were on the podcast last, Matt. So we had a couple of runners like Luke Slater and Farms were in that situation. They were trying their best to make it through that second night, but they dropped. Farms on 36 and Luke at 34. So how did it change the dynamic of the race, losing those two runners at night time when they were trying to make it through the night? Was it like, were you sad for them?
Yeah, definitely. Like I don't know Luke very well, but obviously know Farms a bit more through you and previous events, and I know how much you wanted to make it through. But it just goes to show that how particularly for your first time to break through that second night and to make a third day, how particularly hard that is, and that you see a lot of huge totals that make the front page of social media, and we know all the superstars in the format, but really as a percentage, very, very, very few people ever make it through that second night and into the third day. It's actually a really good achievement, and it's sort of underspoken about just how tough it is, and I've got no doubt Farms and Luke and anyone that's around that mark, and yourself, Pato, you've got a race coming up, getting through that second night. I just can't overstate how much energy you get when you see that dawn and knowing that you've done it, and you can literally sit down, get some breakfast and coffee, look at the sunlight, and you reset and you're ready to go again. You got anything else to add to that, Ben?
No, that's pretty spot on. I couldn't believe it. I think we talked about it at the time, how much faster we were moving from the moment the sun came up. We're back to like 45, 46-minute loops and having to actually back off a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that. It made a big difference, the sun at this race.
Yeah, if there's any advice I can give you, Pato, and Farms for the future, when it gets ugly and dark at, you get that 3 a.m., 4 a.m. itis and you want it and you feel like there's no hope, mate. I've been there before. That happened to me at Wild Dog, and it haunted me for a long time. You just get through that 2-hour period, stay alive, and the sun comes up, you feel like Superman. You really do. So, yeah, don't give up.
Yeah. Because I was surprised when Farms dropped. Sorry.
Yeah, and we saw it, as soon as dawn came up, Brandon, who, we're all running the same pace. Brandon did, the only difference between Brandon and Farms was Brandon did make it through the night, and he made it to dawn, and he was a brand new man. He ran through the entire day.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
I was just surprised that Farms, if I had known he was so close to dropping, I just assumed he was going to make it to 6. I mean, it was so close.
Yeah.
So, I wish I had spoken to him a bit earlier, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised when he came back. He also forgot his watch ran out of batteries, and he forgot to take his phone out with him. So he kind of didn't even know, couldn't even track the time on that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, he was hallucinating pretty bad. So I reckon the sun probably came up at around the 40-yard mark, and there was you two and the Crow left, and he's a super driven dude and a really awesome bloke. So like having someone like that there running in the 40s for the first time with you guys, does that like does that help you guys like watching him do things he's doing for the first time? What do you think, Matt?
For sure. Yeah, no, 100% it did. He's an energetic guy. He was great. He was great fun to run with on that day. He was so psyched to be in the 40s.
Yeah.
And then, 45, that's 300 kilometers. Oh, yeah, 300 Ks. And then, 48, he's like 200 miles. He was so pumped. And
Yeah.
it just seemed like it was just a foregone conclusion that he was going to make it to 50, but he just never quite got there. But he he was like a kid in a candy store for a while. And his enthusiasm was definitely infectious.
Yeah.
So yeah, he got me through a few hours on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. That would have been. I wish. Yeah, I mean that would have been awesome. Like, did that help you as well get through that that third day, Matt? Just having the Crow there and helping him get through to 48.
I honestly can't speak like more highly of him. Like the reality is he's just so much more fun than Ben and I. He like Ben and I, we would have ran all day. It just simply wouldn't have been quite as fun without Brandon.
We barely would have spoken, I reckon.
Yeah, we would have ran 50 hours. We would have ran 200 miles without saying a whole lot. But on that third day with Brandon with us, and he was a yardstick, whenever we wanted to talk, he was always there to talk, and he sort of just swapped between running with Ben and myself and a little bit on his own when he wanted to slow down a little bit. But he was the one that kept us company and made it fun. That is without a doubt.
Yeah, unreal. So I reckon it probably would have been about 3 p.m. that he dropped, and it was just down to the two of you. So at that point in the race, Matt, when you realised that it was just down to the two of you, do you remember what your mindset was like? Were you all set to go for another 48 hours?
Look, no, I wasn't set to go. Look, I knew by that point that 50 hours was going to happen. Like my body was in really good shape, to be honest. All the regular, stiffness and muscle soreness and all that. But in terms of things that actually end your race, I had none of that. So at that point, when the Crow dropped, I knew that there was potential for a lot more hours. And then obviously, Ben and I had to have a chat and figure out, geez, what are we actually going to do?
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I was surprised. Like as Ben just touched on lap 48, which ended up being the Crow's last successful loop. Like he was every bit as strong as us. I sort of saw no sign that he was going to end on 48. So I just sort of assumed that he was going to get to 50 as well. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. But yeah, when he dropped. Sort of. I knew that the race was not almost over, so there wasn't a whole lot of. It was sort of back to business, to be honest. We celebrate. We gave him a hug and a kiss and said congratulations. But we had to sort of get back to business pretty quick because we knew that night was coming quickly, and with that, we're dropping 3 or 4 minutes every single loop, and we sort of have to actually be mindful that we're not losing too much time here.
Yeah. So you mentioned you came together and had a little chat about what you're going to do here. Like, did you go out and run together for a bit and talk? What do you remember what the discussion was like? Do you remember, Ben?
You want to hit this one, Ben?
So we sort of probably run about 4 hours or so in silence.
Yeah.
I think while we were both sort of thinking about, oh God, is this another day? Or because I'm looking at Matt and thinking, God, he looks pretty strong. And so I started thinking, when like I started thinking about the end. I'm not going to lie. I started thinking, okay, this could be over soon, and that'd be kind of nice. And then I'm looking at Matt and I'm thinking, God, this could be going at lunchtime. And then I started thinking, oh God, I've got to work. This could go. I could end up having 3 hours sleep and then having to drive to Timboon.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all this stuff's going through my head, and we ran together the whole time. But yeah, I think there was a lot of thinking going on, and then as I remember it, I just sort of mentioned to Matt, I think at 55 or something, you must be starting to think about the fact that you're about to jump into Johan's spot on the Australian team. And that was it. And then we just started talking. And I think Matt was sort of like, oh, yeah, what is Johan on? And we ended up having to Google it when we come in next time. And then we talked about that for a while. And I think Matty sort of got it pretty keen to at least knock Johan off. And then, which he did. And then went a little bit more on top of that. And then it's Matt's turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were sort of, I guess we were looking for a fitting way to end it without it.
Yeah, we were.
Neither of us really had a whole lot to prove in this. Like, we'd both run well enough and felt good enough that it was, no matter what, it was going to be an extremely successful event. Ben, there's no doubt Ben could have ran a PB if I had have stuck with him. And he knows that. So I assume, Ben knows that the next time he does a backyard, he's in for a massive, massive result. And the same with me. I went into it looking for a great result. And at the time when we were in the mid-50s, like, I'd already achieved that, I wasn't looking, I didn't need at the time, as I said earlier, there are plenty more races between now and the SAT champs, that I'm going to do. And to be honest, regardless of how many I ran at Melbourne, I was probably already going to sign up for GV in that silver ticket race. So that result wasn't going to stop me from signing up to GV. So I was just in that perfect intoxication of satisfaction and sleep deprivation that allowed me to start thinking about, oh, look, I'm actually happy to pull the pin now. And when we sort of started talking about, the at-large list and things like that, and we brought up a number of 56 or 57, and it just felt right, to be honest. And don't get me wrong, I was tired. I was definitely, I was ready to stop. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was, at some points, I would be walking at a sort of our planned walking spot, and I'd blink and close my eyes, and then my eyes sort of wouldn't open, and I'd realize that I sort of walked 10 steps with my eyes closed. And so I wasn't scared or anything, because, I could start running again and it'd all be fine. But I was definitely tired, so I was happy with the number that we'd achieved, and the amount of sort of fatigue, and tiredness that I was feeling. 57 just felt like a really good number to finish the race on, and it allowed me, still being in a pretty good sort of headspace, to sort of start digesting the great race that we had. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, unreal. And Ben, was there a time in the race, like close to the end, where you actually had a figure in mind that you would have stopped at?
Yeah, I had decided in that 4 hours of silence that if we got to my PB, that I would have to run beyond 65 to go above Rob on the at-large list.
Yeah.
And then I knew realistically, once I've done that, I am probably going to lose that drive that I've currently got, just knowing myself, what I'm like. So at 65, I would have been starting to ask questions.
So I think you answered that last question perfectly anyway. It sounds like you probably would have stopped at around 66.
Yeah, well, at 65, you start thinking about 72, don't you? For sure. And I think I would have had it in the legs, but that would have taken me to 14 hours before my workday started,
right,
which is probably getting a bit close.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think around 65, 66, I would have talked myself into stopping. And there was definitely a part of me that felt like he should be trying to help or convince Matt to keep going. But it was such a tough decision to make at that point. So I just decided to just shut up and not say anything. Because we're so close to the 60s. Like, Matt could run into the 60s here, and that would be epic. And then I thought, what if he comes good and I go bad? I don't know. But, yeah, I'm sort of with Matt. It felt like the right time, to be honest. And, yeah, it was a nice finish in the end.
Yeah, so, yeah, it was unreal. And Matt, was like your crew, like Peter Clark, were they like trying to get you to keep going?
Look, to be honest, I sort of kept Pete. He's probably he's learning this right now when he listens to this. I sort of kept Pete in the dark a little bit because Pete is fantastic and he's really professional. And if I was to tell him that I'm talking to Ben about choosing when to stop, he would have been really upset with me, and really been assertive in his opinions of what I should be doing, because, his job is to get the absolute best out of me, and for me to be even talking to Ben about these sorts of issues and this sort of scenario, I don't think Pete would have appreciated it because, when we started this, on Saturday afternoon, obviously the intention is to run until you cannot run any further possibly, or you win the race. So to talk about something other than those two scenarios or those two outcomes, it's not really in the best spirit of backyard racing. And Pete's very professional. He's very much a backyard purist. So look, I went out on lap 57 as normal. We completed that loop, got a bit of food in me. I was sort of a little bit, I didn't need to drink as much food or whatever because I knew what was about to happen. And then, just, you see it on the footage. We started loop 58. I stopped and shook Ben's hand and gave him a hug. And I think you can hear it in the background on the footage from the social media stuff that Peter Clark's saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What's happening here?" He was so surprised when I shook his hand because, look, my crewman, and this is fantastic. He thought we were running into the morning, and he was prepared to. He was ready to get me to the morning, which is fantastic. And so the next event, I hope I can repay him by running, to win and or run till I can't possibly run anymore.
Yeah. Do you reckon, Matt, if of you 6 months ago, would you believe if someone told you that you finished a race like that?
Nah, probably not. No, probably not. I consider myself a backyard purist as well. So to finish a race, anything other than either winning or completely finding your limit, yeah, to me, yeah, it might not be in the best spirit of the format. But man, when you've been running for 3 days and you're exhausted, your mind does funny things, and so we all have an excuse on that front. We all stop eventually, and we all stop for reasons. So who am I to judge? But yeah, it would have been a surprise.
Yeah.
I think for anyone who's never done it, once you start doing 200-kilometer weeks in training, it's almost impossible to time out. I don't know. If you don't have an issue, and it can be so hard to manage that fatigue, but your legs will just keep going once you've trained that hard.
Yeah, unreal.
Yeah.
So I guess an interesting way to gauge how much backyard ultras have grown since 22 after MVP, has the response on social media to your performance been on another level, Ben?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's been nice, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably lucky. I've had a few good results now, but yeah, it has been pretty good. It was nice to have someone there that I knew, apart from Camille, who saw the race, and then it was afterwards like, that's just nuts, 400 kilometers, like that's just nuts. So yeah, but it has been good, has been nice, yeah. But thank you for anyone who has messaged me as well. All wonderful people, thank you.
And Matt, you're not really a social media nut, but still, has your Instagram lit up since your performance?
Oh, not really. I'm not a super social media butterfly, but no, I'm just really appreciative of my wife. Sort of, she's far more social media sort of savvy than me. She sort of passes on and shares all this information with all the friends around our hometown, Currumbura, and my family. So I'm walking down the street in Currumbura, and I go to the supermarket, and like another parent of a child that our kids go to school with might approach me in the supermarket and say, "Oh, I think you're nuts for what you were doing. Oh, you were fantastic, great job. We were cheering you on." So in that regard, it feels really special. But being not a sort of a social media type person, I don't get a lot of it, to be honest. which is you expect that when you're like that. So it's all fine.
Yeah.
Matt and I don't even follow each other on Strava. Matt and I have a Strava standoff. No, we won't follow each other. We want to see who's going to be the first one to send a request. So.
Well, I was scared of sending you a request, Ben, because it says on yours you don't accept follows from people you haven't met.
Yeah, that was just being a father of a young family. That's
fair enough.
That was all.
Yeah. After the race had finished, Ben, the feeling of being the last one standing, was it like more sweet than MVP just because with more experience you know how hard these races are to win?
No, straight up, MVP was nuts. Yeah. I just thought that was amazing. Yeah, I was so psyched to win that, and because that one came unexpectedly, too. So yeah, I was very excited to win MVP. This one, I don't know. It felt like more of, yeah, it's going to sound corny, or I don't know if Matt will even believe me, but it felt like more of a team sort of an undertaking, I suppose. We went there to try and run a decent total at Melbourne's first event for ourselves and for the event itself. And yeah, it didn't feel like I'd beaten anyone, to be honest. I mean, I was lucky and I'm appreciative of the fact that I got to run the final lap, but no, it was completely different. Yeah. But I think because I got along so well with Brandon as well and Matt, and the three of us we just kept going until we were done. It didn't really feel like anyone was trying to beat anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. The how does the result shape the rest of your backyard plans, like between now and I guess the Sat Champs next year?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I think looking at it and sort of seeing or experiencing how easily Matt and I both ran into the high 50s may have been a little bit of a wake-up call that it wouldn't be that hard for a few other people to do that. But then again, I don't know, because I've run into the high 50s a few times and most of the time it really sucks and it's really hard. So, I'm probably not as confident that my 62 will keep me on the list as I was, but probably more confident that if I do get knocked off, that I can run a solid total to get back on if I want to next year.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed any plans at this stage, just maybe changed the mindset a little bit.
Yeah. And what about you, Matt? Are all the same races you had planned still in your diary?
Yeah, this result in this event doesn't change anything. Like I achieved exactly sort of what I wanted to. Look, I'll have a little bit of a break now, and then I'll sort of walk out the front door and start training towards GV in September, which is the silver ticket event. So look, realistically, I've still got 2 more cracks at it to make the Sat Champs team. So even in 57, which, with a lot of very strong events coming up, particularly Dead Cow Gully and the other silver ticket events that'll draw big crowds. Look, I don't expect 57 to hold up, but what 57 does do is it's given me the confidence to do 2 more races and hunt for an even bigger total. And if one of them is a silver ticket, well, then so be it. So, yeah, definitely, look, Shepparton in September is definitely the next one. That's without a doubt. And depending on how that goes, like by some miracle, if I was to secure a silver ticket, maybe I'd think about, doing a fun, a different event early next year. But if I don't secure the silver ticket and don't run a number that, locks you into a at-large list, I'll look elsewhere and have one more crack at it. So yeah, I've got 2 more chances.
Well, the 50 yards does get you free entry into Dead Cow Gully, this year's Dead Cow Gully. So you must be tempted to rub shoulders with like the likes of Harvey Lewis and Phil Gore, Sam Harvey, Moran. Tim will be.
Oh no, it sounds good, but no, look, to be honest, it doesn't interest me. Like, fingers crossed, if I was to ever qualify for the Sat Champs again, I'd be running with those boys there. So, look, I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful that I can run with those guys again. But yeah, the thought of running again in June, it's just not a reality. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. What about MVP 2025? Are either of you maybes for that one?
26.
Yeah, oh, yeah, 26.
Yeah,
You go, Matt.
possibly. Look, that's probably falls into that category of if I was to secure a silver ticket, that would open up a block of time where I could just pick and choose a fun event, and MVP would be one that falls into that. I don't think I'd choose to use MVP as a race to target a Sat Champs qualifier. With the weather that we've had over the last few years at MVP, and of course the course that we all know very well, I'm not convinced it's conducive for qualifying for Sat Champs. It's a beautiful race on its own, but I think the records sort of show that it's pretty tough to run huge numbers at that event. So if I was to go there in 2026, it means that I would have had a fantastic race at GV.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be there then.
Yeah, lock it in.
Yeah.
What about you, Ben? Do you reckon you'll be MVP again one day?
It's kind of become a tradition now that one of my kids runs MVP every year, and Camille's run the last two with the kids. So I suspect the same thing will happen in 2026, whether it's me or Camille that runs with the kids. Yeah, the question would be, if it's me, will I be able to stop? Or will I be looking at people thinking, oh, I only have to run this much to win? So, but yeah, 100% with Matt. Like, if anyone ever runs 60 on that course, do it. You know, well, if two people ever run 59, 60 on that course, yeah, that's going to be a pretty good effort.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What about Melbourne next?
I've got a. Oh.
Sorry, Matt. Go for it.
No. Well, you're the host, so sorry to butt in. I just want to ask Ben a question. Like, in terms of Sat Champs for next year, and you sort of ensuring that you make it. Would you ever, like, depending on results from, say, Dead Cow Gully and things like that, would you ever consider, like, is the silver ticket in Victoria even on your radar at all?
This year? No, it's not. No. I've already planned out a year, and I've got a break from. I don't have a race between July and November, except that there is a race in September I might do. So that break, that July, August, September, October, is my only break at the moment. So,
what about? I know you do come from WA. Like, is there a chance you could go to Hurdy's next year, because that's a silver ticket race?
Yeah, to be honest, if we went down that chasing a spot path, that would probably be on the list. Yeah, because that's quite easy, because we've got Camille's parents are there, so babysitting the kids is easy. Getting people to duck in and give Camille a break is easy. Yeah, it seems odd that we have to go so far, but Perth is an easy place for us to race.
Yeah, unreal. What about Melbourne next year? Will you be back to defend your title, Ben, and your assist, Matt?
I'm pretty sure at the time we said, "I'm not coming back here." But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, when it comes around and that decision has to be made, it's a hard decision to make, isn't it? It's hard to not go back. But I guess we'll just have to see what else is happening. Yeah. April's probably, to be honest, probably won't have anything on in April next year, so it's possible.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
And if Matt goes,
yeah,
Well, maybe I could just get on the Sat Champs team that way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that changes everything. I didn't even think about that. All right, lock it in. Look,
there is no way Tim Kakrazak isn't going to Melbourne next year.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're so fortunate in Victoria that, you know, Victoria's got so many backyard ultras now. I'm a devoted enthusiast of the backyard format, and I wish I could do them all every single year, but I just can't. You know, and like I'm missing out on Wild Dog this year, and that's my local race. So I'd love to do that next year as well. But if I do what I said I want to do and spend this year chasing, you know, trying to qualify for Sat Champs, then maybe if Shepparton doesn't pan out the way I hope or want, then maybe Melbourne is the answer next year, provided, you know, knowing that there'll be some great runners in the field. That's definitely an option. Now you got me thinking, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. It's a good time. Just before the cutoff.
Yeah, and it looked like such. It was an awesome race. I was crewing there. It was just seemed like an awesome race to be in. Like, great spot, great. The starting corral area, that was unreal as well. It was just like a really nice spot and a really good race.
Yeah, one thing I do want to say is I've been around the backyard block in Victoria, as sort of have you, Pato. And I must say this event here, I've never seen so many new faces to the format. MVP, they have their Trails Plus, you know, loyal fans, so they'll always have a loyal following there. GV always has the Northern Victorian crews that'll always support there, but this was the first time I've seen so many fresh faces to the format. I thought it was really refreshing and really positive to see new faces at a backyard. So I reckon that it's fantastic for the future of the format.
Yeah, unreal. I'm so glad it was you two who were able to bring a backyard ultra event in Victoria into the 50s. I'm not counting the Sat Champs, but I thought it was awesome that it was you two who brought us into the 40s. Now you've brought us into the 50s. It was just a special race. And I think a lot of people were really excited to see both of you do what you did. And it kind of felt like they were going into a bit of a time machine to witness it. That's what it felt like for me. So Matt,
that's a really nice thing to say.
Yeah, it was awesome. And you guys, you guys will probably be the first ones to bring us into the 60s and 70s, and maybe you'll be the first ones to bring Victoria into the 100s.
Let's not worry about that just yet.
We were so close.
Yeah. There's a guy called Tim Kakrazak running around.
Yep.
I think he might have something to do with it as well.
Yeah. So when you were on last, Matt, it wasn't that long ago, and you did give your 3 backyard ultra tips. But Ben, I've never got your 3 backyard ultra tips before. Sorry to put you.
Yeah, right. No, that's all right. So mine would be sleep early and often. A lot of people are like, I don't even try to sleep for the first 24 or whatever. I had my first sleep 9 hours in this race, and it was a genuine. I was out. I think that's really important. Helps with the fatigue later in the race. And on that would be to have multiple ways of consuming fluid and calories, so that if you are a bit late or if you need a toilet break, you can sacrifice your eating and drinking in favour of sleep, so that you can take your food and your water out with you. You know, I mean, Matt runs with a handheld, I think, pretty much every lap. So I only do that every now and then. Is that one thing or two things?
I think you've given two so far: sleep early and nutrition.
Have multiple ways of consuming your calories, either in the camp or out on the trail.
Yeah.
And the third thing would be, there's a few important things here. If you can get a crew person that you trust, that's invaluable, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unreal. Well, don't go anywhere. I'll hit stop on the recording, but congratulations, both of you. That was unreal to watch, and it was so impressive. I really, really loved it. Following, I loved being there. It was really special being there, and congratulations again. And we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Pato.
Thanks, Pato.